Open any kitchen drawer in a boomer's house, the one that never quite closes all the way, and you'll find a story. Not a junk drawer, not really. A time capsule. Rubber bands looped around doorknobs. A church key bottle opener nobody's used since 1988. And bags. So many bags, folded into perfect little triangles or stuffed inside one another like a plastic Russian nesting doll, waiting for a purpose that may never come. This is where our story begins tonight, in the quiet, sacred clutter of a generation that learned, the hard way, never to assume there'd be more. Because to understand why boomers hold on to things, you have to understand who raised them. Baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964, grew up in the shadow of parents who had lived through the Great Depression and World War II. Those parents didn't throw away string. They didn't waste a scrap of tinfoil. They rationed sugar and rubber and gasoline, and they passed that instinct down at the dinner table, in the garage, in the way they folded a paper bag instead of crumpling it. For boomers, saving things wasn't a quirk. It was inherited wisdom. It was a form of love, disguised as clutter. And so, decades later, in homes across the country, that instinct is still alive, tucked into cabinets and closets and the backs of garages, waiting quietly for a use that, more often than not, never quite arrives. Let's start where most of us start, in the kitchen, with the bags. Every boomer household has a drawer, or a designated bag inside a bag, where plastic grocery sacks go to retire. They get flattened, folded, sometimes even ironed if we're being honest, and stashed away for their second act. A garbage can liner. An impromptu rain bonnet. A poop bag for the dog on an evening walk. Paper bags get the same treatment, save to wrap a sandwich, line a drawer, or serve as makeshift wrapping paper on a birthday when nobody feels like driving to the store. There's something almost poetic about it. In a world of curbside recycling and reusable totes, that plastic bag stash represents an older belief. The belief that nothing is really trash until you've squeezed every last use out of it. Right next to those bags, you'll usually find the mugs. Cabinets full of them, mismatched, chipped, some missing handles entirely. A souvenir mug from a family trip to Niagara Falls in 1979. A mug with a local realtor's smiling face printed on the side, given away at some long-forgotten open house. A mug from a job that doesn't exist anymore, at a company that doesn't exist anymore either. None of them match. None of them are supposed to. Each one is a little postcard from a specific morning, a specific memory, and even if the coffee tastes the same out of a plain white mug from the store, it just doesn't feel the same. So the chipped ones stay. The mismatched ones stay. They're not dishware anymore, not really. They're a scrapbook you can drink coffee out of. Of course, not every dish in the house gets used so casually. Down the hall, behind glass doors, sits the china cabinet. This is sacred ground. Inside, the good dishes wait, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, for an occasion worthy enough to bring them out. A holiday dinner, maybe. A wedding, if you're lucky. For most of the year, that fine china just sits there, gleaming quietly behind the glass, doing absolutely nothing except being beautiful and being remembered. It's not really about the dishes at all. It's about tradition, about the idea that some things are too special for the everyday, that a household should have one corner reserved for elegance, even if elegance only gets invited over once or twice a year. From the dining room, let's wander toward the garage, or maybe the closet under the stairs, where the paper starts to pile up. Old magazines. Old newspapers. Stacks of them, sometimes going back decades, kept for reasons that shift depending on the day. Maybe they're for wrapping fragile Christmas ornaments come December. Maybe they're kindling for a fire on a cold winter night. Or maybe, just maybe, they're historical keepsakes, proof that a boomer was there, alive and reading, the week a president was shot, or a man walked on the moon, or the local team finally won it all. Throwing away a newspaper from a day like that can feel like throwing away the day itself. So the stack grows, quietly, in the corner, and nobody quite has the heart to haul it to the curb. Back in the kitchen, we find the Tupperware. Not the flimsy stuff from today, but the real thing, thick, sturdy, dishwasher-scarred containers in avocado green and harvest gold and burnt orange, colors that don't exist in kitchens anymore because nobody makes them like that. These containers have survived birthday parties and Thanksgivings and countless trips to the freezer and back. And here's the thing about vintage Tupperware. It doesn't matter if half the lids have gone missing over the years. The bottoms get kept anyway, nested inside each other in a cabinet like plastic Russian dolls, because you just never know when that missing lid might turn up, and because, frankly, a good container is a good container, lid or no lid. Speaking of containers, let's talk about the ones that never held Tupperware to begin with. The metal coffee cans, washed out and repurposed to hold screws and nails and every loose bolt that's ever come off anything in the house. The old pickle jars, doing the exact same job on a smaller scale. The margarine tubs, which stopped holding margarine sometime around the Clinton administration and have since become the official vessel for sending leftovers home with dinner guests. And the cookie tins, the beautiful decorative ones that show up around the holidays, which almost never actually contain cookies. Open one up and you're far more likely to find a tangle of thread, buttons, and sewing needles than a single ginger snap. It's one of the great quiet jokes of the boomer household. If the tin says cookies, check twice before you get your hopes up. Now let's head toward the junk drawer, or maybe a shoebox in the closet, where the technology graveyard lives. Flip phones with dead batteries. A Walkman that hasn't spun a cassette in 20 years. Remotes for television sets that were sold at a garage sale back when gas was under $2 a gallon. And cords. Dozens of cords, tangled together, belonging to devices nobody can quite identify anymore. None of it works. None of it will ever work again. But it stays, tucked away just in case, because throwing it out feels like admitting defeat to some hypothetical future emergency that's never actually going to happen. And if the electronics themselves didn't get tossed, you can bet their paperwork didn't either. Somewhere in a filing cabinet, or a shoebox, or a kitchen drawer with everything else, there's a folder of manuals and warranties for appliances that left the house years ago. Instructions for a VCR from 1987. A warranty card for a water heater that was replaced back when the kids were still in school. These documents outlived the machines they came with by decades, kept alive on paper long after the object itself went to the landfill, just in case someone, somewhere, someday needs to know exactly how to program that VCR's clock. Then there's the swag. The free stuff. Hats and keychains and tote bags and pens, collected from bank openings, county fairs, work conferences, and church picnics over the course of a lifetime. None of it was ever particularly wanted. All of it was free, and free has a way of feeling like it deserves a second thought before it hits the trash. So it accumulates in junk drawers and closet shelves, a quiet museum of every promotional giveaway a boomer has ever walked past a table and picked up. From promotional swag, it's a natural drift to the recipe box, or the stack of cookbooks on the kitchen counter that never quite made it onto a shelf. Clipped recipes from magazines, box tops that promise the perfect casserole, and handwritten cards passed down from a mother or a grandmother, the corners soft and stained from years of use. These aren't just recipes. They're family history, written in cursive, measured in a pinch of this and a dash of that. A cookbook might have gone out of print decades ago, but if it's the one that has the good pot roast recipe in it, it's not going anywhere. Out in the garage, the mystery deepens. Tools hang on pegboards or sit in coffee cans, and more than a few of them serve a purpose nobody in the house can quite remember anymore. A strange little wrench shaped like nothing else in the toolbox. A hand-crank device that might have fixed a lawnmower once, back in 1994. These tools stay because somewhere, deep down, there's a belief that the exact right job for that exact strange tool is still out there, waiting, and the day it shows up is the day that tool finally earns its keep. Back inside, in the bathroom, we find one of the strangest and most universally understood traditions of the boomer household. Decorative soaps shaped like seashells, sitting in a dish, never once touched by wet hands. Guest towels, folded just so, that exist purely to be looked at, while the actual hand-drying happens on a much less photogenic towel hidden behind the door. Tissue box covers, doilies, little baskets of potpourri. All of it exists in a kind of untouchable display mode. Bathroom decor is still life, more museum exhibit than functional object. Then there's the closet, where time folds in on itself entirely. Bell-bottoms from the 70s. A leisure suit that hasn't seen daylight since a wedding decades ago. These clothes get saved with a very specific kind of faith, the belief that fashion moves in circles, that everything old eventually comes back around, and that when it does, a boomer wants to be ready, hanger in hand, proof that they were there the first time and lived to see it return. And then, quietly, there are the cards. Every sentimental letter ever received, tucked into a shoebox or a drawer, kept because throwing away someone's handwriting can feel like throwing away a piece of them. Right alongside that box sits a second stash, this one full of unused greeting cards, purchased ahead of time for birthdays and anniversaries and sympathies that haven't happened yet. It's a strange but touching kind of preparedness, being ready to say the right thing to the right person, long before the moment even arrives. And finally, we arrive at the pieces that might just outlast everyone. The old lamps. The furniture with the slightly wobbly leg. The little trinkets on the shelf that don't seem to do much of anything except sit there and be old. These are the potential antiques, the maybes, kept not because they're useful today but because someday, they might be valuable, sentimentally or otherwise, and someday, they might be exactly what a grandchild wants, even if that grandchild hasn't been born yet. Taken together, none of this is really about clutter at all. It's about a generation raised to believe that things have worth beyond their function, that an object can hold a memory the way a jar holds pickles, tightly, quietly, for as long as it needs to. Every mismatched mug, every folded bag, every mysterious tool and unused guest towel is a small act of preservation, a quiet refusal to let go of a world that moved a little slower and asked people to make things last. So the next time you open a drawer at your parents' house, or your grandparents' house, and find yourself wondering why on earth they kept that, take a second look. It's not disorder. It's devotion. And somewhere in all that clutter, there's a whole life, carefully saved, one bag, one mug, one cookie tin at a time.